I think that diseases and health problems and major misfortunes that happen to our friends and family, as well as things that happen in the world, they have the potential to wake us up spiritually. There's a number of different ways to respond to a health crisis or any crisis. And there are some people in this world, ourselves included, none of us are perfect. But maybe there's a part of us that maybe doesn't believe that things happen for a reason. And things can happen, crises that can bring people together. We take a look at what our nation is facing. We take a look at what we are facing in our own lives. Sometimes we go through something that is life-changing, or receive some piece of news about someone's health, or a place of our birth and its health. You know, I've been having there's this theme that's been running through my life as someone that's left a particular city, that cares about some people in that city, that cares about the city itself. And there's also pain there. I think what I'm getting at is that there's strength in healing wounds from the past, and there's ways to go about doing that, and there's ways in which we continue to bury that. If only we can really see the root causes of a lot of our problems and stresses. As we look to these unresolved issues, we look at ways to set ourselves free. And a lot of us have been thrown into this world, as there may be a consistent theme running through my life for a couple of years. Certainly there was a lot of travel, difficulty in some of those traveling situations, also periods of isolation in between traveling, the benefits to that, as well as the stresses. It's been very difficult for me, for example, to think about the idea of returning to the city of my birth, and it has a lot to do with my feelings about society, especially those that believe that they are more enlightened or more progressive than the rest of the nation. Portland has an overpopulation problem, despite even my challenges and some negative memories of my last year there. Part of me sees success in healing that wound with Portland itself and some people. When 2015 was another time. When 2016 was another time. We're also in another period of the solar cycle, and for those of you that are new or aren't aware of this, one of the things that I've come to believe or understand, call it an opinion, but I'll explain it to you, is the idea that certain cities that are like, you know, whether you believe they're along ley lines or there's something kind of unique and special about them, Portland being one of those places, there's something about the solar maximum that can bring out, sure, a lot of activity, but some really crazy, insane, like psycho behavior, a lot of excess behavior, to the point where people in a certain part of the planet, for example, places like Portland, places like areas in California, people could be a little bit wackier. There could be like an increase in certain types of crime sprees because of the susceptibility of those humans living in those regions. We're going into solar minimum. And so by the time that 2020 comes around, we're going to be in a deep solar minimum. There's been some apocalyptic predictions about crops along the way. There always is. We certainly are seeing some challenges here in Colorado with the fires as a result of the drought. There's prayers for rain to come soon. Not just the rains tomorrow, but enough to mediate the situation. We can bring that into the conversation here of using a crisis or a breakdown, disease, lack of health, in order to restore health around the corner. You could find, in some circumstances, people coming together in a crisis. I've chosen to particularly to go my own way. I've definitely had the aspirations for a community, but in some situations it's really best for us to try to learn to become as independent as possible when living off the grid, because of personalities, because of the dangers that are out there, the threats that are out there, the personalities that are developing out there in this world where so many people are living out their various realities in this on-world age, digital era, and the influence that comes with the digital era. Influencing people about other people, even people they've never met, people being basically fed information that they may not know is disinformation because of manipulation of things on the internet, things they don't understand. And these are talking about things that cross political boundaries. People can be in their left-right media wars, but that aside, those distractions aside, there is a common theme to the censorship. Another thing that I want to bring up and talk about at some point is how do we, and it could fit into this crisis as well, the crisis of being erased from the internet. Not literally erased, but a very small reach. Ranking, if you will. I'm working on building up the YouTube ranking through daily videos, but as far as reaching people on Facebook, as far as reaching people on Twitter, it is extremely difficult, and I have several Facebook pages, to reach people. While people cry that they're being censored, I see some extremely radical individuals that are at some extreme political positions, bordering psychotic, and they can post like something ridiculous, a fury of angry words and a meme, and there'll be 64 people like laughing and liking their post, and they're just some person on Facebook. I see that as well. How do we overcome that? How do we use the crisis, this failing health of some of our social media accounts, to build new, healthier relationships with people online? How can we see some things as a blessing in disguise, even if it might be a crisis? Maybe some things can wake us up early on. It could be a health issue. But if that health issue wasn't mediated, right, if we didn't stop, think, take a look, and listen inside within ourselves and go, okay, what needs to dramatically change? Because if there wasn't that initial warning sign from the body, something worse could be waiting. This is a way, and I think I'm going to be approaching the topic of men's health now that I'm 38 years old, and I will be 40 in a couple of years. And the realities of aging are there in our world. And instead of deny it, we need to talk about maintaining our youth while we have it, maintaining our health, maintaining our humanity. That may be the key, the secret to vitality. Maintaining our humanity to maintain our health? Yes, absolutely. Alex Ansary is suggesting such a fantastic notion. You know, I downloaded Bruce Lipton talking to Art Bell in 1997 because I like that type of motivational material. I don't necessarily have to fill it, my videos, with conversations about epigenetics to plagiarize someone else's content, but do once in a while I go back to that specific interview, by the way, though, 1997. Or things from, the point is to be inspired, things from the 90s. I talked about the 80s in other videos, an era of innocence for some of us, an era before 9/11, an era where there were seemingly more heroes than villains on a lot of mainstream pop culture television shows, where they seemed to be a style where some things were fresh and new, right? Where people are actually consuming elements of content before digital content, analog content, the original MTV videos, an era. I want my MTV. Something to inspire you. You know, we were born into a amazing time. We were born into amazing times. I was born in 1980. Mount St. Helens blew during that solar maximum. A couple months after I was born. I'm not taking credit for it, but I'm saying that I was born during a period that I think is significant, as well as people that were born the years prior and earlier, and the significant, unusually high solar activity from 1979 and 1981. I think I was born during a particular period that seems to be lined up with cycles that the Earth is going through. Something about being 33 in 2013, or 20 at the age of 2000. and somehow feeling that I'm going through major changes on the microcosmic level as I look at the macrocosmic. So from the macro to the micro, I can see these major changes from the world to myself, from myself to the world, as above, so below, in myself, and also in others. And I don't get deep into astrology or things of that nature, and I'm not here to discredit it. I've seen, though, the influence of certain things over our lives, things like Saturn return. And again, I don't go deep with this stuff. Some of you know what that happens to be. It's a period in our lives, for example, between the ages of, on average, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32. It's like a range of a few years where it's like we're going through that midlife moment, or a period where a lot of things come up for evaluation as to what is the next path for us. I feel like I'm actually there now. That's another conversation. I'm going to come back with another video, midlife, halftime report, life at 38. Let's say the average lifespan 74, maybe a little bit longer by that time, maybe shorter, depending on what happens in the world. We really don't know, or do we? Or do we suspect? And so these crises, to bring it back to here, can catapult us to something higher, hopefully. We don't want to be in like collapse mindset as the economy goes into a depression. Do we want to stay stuck into a depression, or do we want to go in the direction of new opportunities? Did it ignite my passion for off-grid living? Was somehow my difficulty economically related to what happened in 2008, 2009 to a certain degree, just a little bit? Because there definitely seemed to be a roll-off effect that did seem to affect people in the lower tier just a little bit, although it was nothing compared to where it could be. And part of it for me in that crisis was a liberation to set myself free. Here was my attachment to Portland, Oregon, and coming back to it, and in that year of closure with Portland, Oregon, although I think I'm going to go back and it's going to be different, but in that period, I was living in my vehicle without a place to park, but it set me free from Portland being the place for me as far as residing. Setting me free from a limited belief system. What was that limited belief system? Or maybe just focusing on a region, Portlanders, doing something local. And I don't want to get swept up in that dreamland when I go to visit Portland. It's going to be more about healing here and appreciating the people that I'm able to see again and the beauty that comes from that. A friend of mine has a health issue. I was also, told, hey, don't look at it like it's like the person's going a particular direction. The idea to think positive, and the idea of someone recovering from that, from perhaps waking up to that body saying, hey, it's time to change things up. And I myself have been noticing, but of course I live off the grid away from stimulation and electricity, so it's normal for me to be maybe a little bit groggy, maybe unmotivated. But I noticed just a general diminishing of certain types of energy that requires me to be a little bit more on my health. Taking the no smoking a little bit more seriously than I have in the past. Now having 3 months, probably the longest period since I've been on the land that I haven't smoked something like American Spirits as natural as they're believed to be. Here I am at 3 months. Some other mild health changes, nothing serious, but just a regular time to bed, going to bed, and waking up. Going to bed in silence most of the time. I have a Himalayan salt lamp. Some people believe they work, some people don't. I think it looks nice. I think it's like a light power light, to kind of create an ambiance. I've dealt with the shock of isolation. I also try to appreciate it. I worry about other people out there that have to deal with property taxes in the city, in places where they've invested, places like Portland, places where they may have invested in their home a long time ago, and now it's about keeping up with the property taxes to continue to live in their home. That is a very concerning situation. I'm not an expert, but I do propose the idea for those open to it of the concept of selling the prices high, as they say, and stepping back from maybe a particular attachment to a particular region. Can regions themselves, not just lifestyles, in some cases, be adverse to our health? I think we all know the answer to that question. Can it be adverse to our health if there is a concentration of unresolved emotional issues, or maybe something serious? Is it really unreasonable for someone to relocate if there are too many memories of someone that they really cared about? A friendship, a relationship, maybe with a significant other, a marriage, for example, a girlfriend. For myself, there was a sense of, and it's like that song, if I can't have you, I don't want nobody, baby. And that song may not be from my generation, but I've lived through that. And I've lived through that moment to where songs like that really mean something, and other songs. And it's difficult for some of us to be in a particular region. For myself, I really want to see more community around independent thinkers. I think that there is a lot of groupthink on both the Patriot Prayer side of things, the Trump groups that are marching in Portland, as well as the group known as Antifa. Those are believed to be like two different groups, but there's still collectivist groupthink with regards to values to a certain degree, tactics, ways of communicating. And so for me, the idea of heartbreak with Portland goes way beyond that. It's like almost a sense of failure that I failed to organize people into something, instead of just allowing Portland to be just it, without me having to contribute something big to it, or it giving something back big to me other than life. It gave me life. Humans gave me life that came together in the summer of 79. But to eject me during that solar maximum, people that came together in that city of Portland, Oregon, I don't believe there are accidents. There was a purpose, and even me falling down on my face in Portland, being thrown in jail over and over and over during that period of drug abuse, the late 90s, finding myself, I wait till I'm 18. I wait till I'm 18 to go out and make mistakes like that. To crawl myself out of the gutter, if you will, literally in 2004, the year of springing forward, 2005, OTBTV comes alive. It's alive! And I met Emily. I met a woman that I saw something in. And even if things didn't work out the way that I wanted them to work out on my timetable, it feels good to appreciate a human being for what they are, even if you don't necessarily get what you want. The long-term relationship. Something that goes somewhere, like a long walk on the beach. Like something out of one of those Hallmark cards. Christopher Cross is sailing. I don't necessarily want to take it that far. But by the way, if I was to return to Portland, of course, I would need some assistance financially to even get there. And I would consider a Greyhound, actually. If things were to work out as far as staying there, I'd sacrifice that. But yeah, a lot of things. I have been thinking about the beach. No, I don't plan to go swimming. I don't plan to intermingle with any Fukushima radioactive particles. I do want to see the beach, however. Wouldn't mind seeing the California beach, staying there for a few days, doing some writing there, doing some videos. Doing a whole bunch of videos. And then working my way up to the Oregon coast. I think a rideshare option might be great. Right? But the idea of like making peace with the region and making peace with individuals. And so whether the crisis be a health crisis, something happening to our friend, again, mentioning my friend in Texas, and her crisis of someone running a red light, lying about it, blaming it on her, and totaling her $10,000 truck, leaving her without a working vehicle that she needs to get to work. That is a big setback. Why do these things happen in our life? I think we should look at all these things that happen in our life for a reason, as something to catapult us to something better somehow, some way. To turn a crisis into something that is healing. And again, sometimes a crisis happens in our health or in our lives to wake us up so we heal something that is larger. It's like putting our hands on a hot stove. We have those nerve endings for a reason. To wake us up, to tell us to take our hands off that stove, because if we don't take our hands off that stove by waking up to that internal pain, oh man, who knows what kind of damage. We can just light our whole hand on fire. And we don't want that. We don't want things to get that bad. So we should pay attention to how our body feels, how our spirit feels. We should be looking at the thoughts that go through our mind. We should be asking ourselves, are our thoughts our own? Considering ways of maintaining our spiritual protection, if you will, as we go about this interesting, you can even say interdimensional realm of dragons. Speaking of this metaphorically, right? We do live in a world where there are a lot of complex, heavy energies. I think Portland is one of those places. I think other places are intense for me as well. Any major city where there's a lot of people, I just know that place well. Dallas was intense. Going to Tampa Bay, Florida, definitely wouldn't want to stay there too long, or hang around their neighborhoods outside of the downtown core. America is in a difficult position, and there's a part of me that wants to travel to different places in this country to not only interview people, but see how some people are surviving and living, because there are various different types of crises that we're facing that seem to be life transforming. There are people that end up in an economic collapse or crisis, only to find themselves homeless, only to find themselves seeking a solution to that, where it may have been relocation, only to, in my case, coming to you from the moment, at the moment, in a 10 by 12 tiny home, poor man's tiny home, to like a barn shed for a few $1,000s that was trucked up here, money earned from working at a restaurant, money earned from monthly land payments from the YouTube AdSense, and your support at Patreon. And those of you at outsidethebox.vhx.tv. I'm living history of something that hasn't been done. Oh, there's on-demand channels, and there's YouTube channels, and there's all different types of things to entertain you 24/7. How much of it is off the grid? How much of it is running off solar? And even this fan right now that's running to my left, it's running off solar as well. And it may not even be something that I fully understand, but through the crisis of my own period of not even having a place to park my homemade teardrop camper, right, it set me free by forcing me to find my own solution. People could be in a crisis because they find themselves diagnosed with cancer and told they only have so long to live by Western medical science. And if life is something that they're truly passionate about, and if they truly question what the doctor's telling them, and they don't want that to be a reality, and they believe in mind over matter, their thoughts can impact this reality, especially our health, epigenetics. Back to the Art Bell, Bruce Lipton interview from 1997, where these ideas were being shared way back when. Someone could then be armed with the knowledge that they then need to change their thoughts to save their life. And there are people that have been put into the situation. Either they believe in the placebo effect, or they can go out on the doctor's timetable. How can we apply that very survival mechanism within us to create our own reality, the things larger? And I think we should do that. The wake-up call that a friend of mine may be ill, and it's possible for him to recover, not only gives me hope, but on a more basic level, wakes me up to the fact that I need to heal that relationship before either of us are off this planet. And we never know who's going to go first based on age. The world works a lot more mysterious than that. One more thing that I'll share with you. I'm not going to tell you the whole parable, but it's good luck, bad luck. And it's the idea of you never know whether something is good or bad until after the fact. And often in life, things are changing. There's a parable, a Chinese parable, that explains that. Till next video, I'm Alex Ansary reminding you the path to the ultimate truth and place of power still lies within.